Today we're glad to present to your attention an interview with PhD, Doctor of Philosophy, Resource Exchange International Central Asia Director, Associate Professor of the Law Department of Казахстанско-Американского Free University, Ronald Uайли. Ron teaching international relations courses for undergraduate and graduate students at our university.
Hello, Ron. We are very glad to see you again at our university. Would you tell our viewers a little more about your work at Resource Exchange Internationals?
Certainly. I began working with Resource Exchange International, or we can just say REI, in 1994 when we first moved to Kazakhstan. And our organization fosters cultural exchange and professional exchange. And so that was the work I was doing in Almaty. I began as an English teacher, then I also spent time directing a microcredit program in some villages in the Jambul region of Almaty Oblast. And so that was my work from 1994 until 2010. And we returned to the US in 2010, and I worked in the headquarters, mostly in recruiting new staff for REI, until 2019 when we came back to Kazakhstan. And REI had done a lot of work in several Central Asian countries between 1992 and 2015, but the work had slowly ended and we wanted to relaunch, and that's why my wife Janine and I came back in 2019.
Okay, thank you. So 2020 was a difficult year for everyone, yes? Especially for teachers, researchers. And how has pandemic affected your life and your work?
Well, the biggest effect was that because of the type of visas that we had when we came back to Kazakhstan in 2019, we weren't allowed to stay in the country. We had to leave. And so in March, we returned to the US and we had to live in isolation. And even though we were closer to our family, many times we couldn't see them, we couldn't spend time with them. So it did slow our work down. But we used technology to continue our language study, and we also did some projects for our REI headquarters. And so we weren't stopped completely, but it did impact us. It's taken us 10 months to finally return to Kazakhstan because of the pandemic.
Okay, and now you said about your family. Would you tell a little more about your family?
Certainly, yeah. My wife Janine and I have been married for almost 42 years. We have 4 children, 3 daughters and 1 son. Our daughters are all married, and we have 1 grandson that our oldest daughter and her husband adopted from China, and they're in the process of adopting another child. So we will soon have 2 grandchildren.
Okay, and about pandemic, how do you think has the last year influenced people, their moods and psychological health, mental health?
Well, I think we all know that it's been a very stressful time. It's been very difficult, and sadly, because of the isolation, because of the stress, there has been, I think, a higher rate of suicides and depression. And honestly, in my opinion, the decisions have been made almost entirely on a medical and epidemiological basis as far as lockdowns and restrictions on schools and businesses, etc. I would have preferred to see them integrate the medical, the psychological, the sociological into those decisions, because it will be many years before we understand the full impact that that the lockdowns and the isolation has had on our societies.
Yeah. And how do you think, are there any methods that help to cope to people with stress due to distance work and learning? And how do you think? Do you plan in the future to work with our students and our teachers in this format?
Well, I know for myself and for Janine as well, one of the best ways we have had of coping is by hiking and taking long walks and getting physical exercise, just to give us some variety in our lifestyle, especially after having to sit in front of a screen almost all day, every day. Now in the wintertime, and especially when we have so much snow and ice, that's more difficult to do. So we have to find other ways to get exercise and to create some variety in our lives. Yes, of course, I want to have that kind of variety as I'm working with students, and I'm hoping as the weather gets warmer that maybe we can do some hikes and strolls together to have more variety in how we interact together as a class.
That's great tips. And so you're a teacher, you're a researcher, yeah? And what does it mean to you to be a teacher?
Yes, well, I'm very motivated always to learn, to grow in knowledge, to do research, but I've never been a person who just wanted to accumulate knowledge and information just for myself. I'm always very motivated to share the things that I'm learning with other people to help them improve their lives in practical ways. And so even studying and earning a PhD, I wanted to use what I know to help people. And my field is conflictology, and all of us experience conflict in our lives, in our communities, in one way or another. And so preventing conflict and resolving conflict are two important parts of my work, and not just for myself, but for anybody that I can help.
Okay, and in your opinion, how has the pandemic affected international cooperation between universities around the world?
I think that the pandemic has forced universities around the world to be more creative and to find ways to cooperate, to collaborate that maybe they hadn't tried before. Just as an example, I was involved in an international conference. It's called the Silk Road Lecture Series last August, that was co-sponsored by Kimep University and Fudan University in Shanghai, China. And my part in that was to be one of the moderators and also to present one of the lectures. But our presenters were in China, Kazakhstan, Europe, and the US. And we had to be more creative. I had to be up at midnight in order to present my lecture so that people in China and Central Asia and Europe could be there during the day. So it was challenging, but we solved the problems. And that's just one example of the type of creativity that it takes in an environment like we've had with the pandemic in order to continue our work in universities.
Okay, and how do you think, is it possible to resolve any conflict? It is your
I think it is possible, but it requires every party in the conflict to want to solve the conflict. Unfortunately, there are people who benefit from conflicts, maybe by helping to keep the conflict going, they might gain in some wealth or they might gain in power. In my field, we call them conflict entrepreneurs. And so they want to use a conflict to benefit themselves at the expense of other people. So if we can't motivate those people to come together and solve the conflict, those conflicts will always continue, sadly. Yeah.
And people should understand they should solve problem and should conflict,
right. Yeah, we need to help them with their motivations. If their motivations are selfish, they'll keep the conflict going.
Yeah, and why is it important, in your opinion, to prevent conflicts, and how we can do it?
Yeah, well, it is so important because of the costs of unresolved conflict can be so great. The human costs, in terms of relationships, in terms of the economics, especially in terms of loss of life. What we saw happen almost exactly a year ago in Masanchi village in the Jambal Oblast began as an automobile accident, and then it became a physical fight. And then that led to rioting, property destruction, people were killed, and thousands of people fled over the border into Kyrgyzstan. That's just one example, and those consequences just continued to multiply, to snowball, until thousands of people were affected, and it became an international incident between the two countries of Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan. That is a very sad but clear example of the importance of trying to prevent conflict. How could that have been prevented? My own research has shown that our elders in our communities have got wisdom that can be applied to build resilience into the community so that when you have an accident, an incident like that happen, if there's strength and resilience in the community, they're able to withstand the pressures for that conflict to escalate. And I think if the leaders, the elders of the two communities could have been already building trust, building relationship between them, when that automobile accident happened, they could have intervened and prevented that specific conflict from escalating into the violence that took place. So I know I answered the first part of your question. I'm not sure I answered the second part.
Okay, so let's talk about some positive things. Our students are looking forward to your classes. And would you tell us briefly, what do you plan to do during your classes with our students? Maybe some activities or something like that?
Well, again, I have to be creative since the classes will be taught online. But I think I've made clear how strongly I feel about the importance of dialogue. And I think that's also important in learning. It can't just be me delivering a lecture. We need to be able to have a conversation, the class and me as the instructor together. So I will definitely be organizing dialogue activities that will help the students and I to learn from each other. Of course, I need to deliver information, but I need to help the students to also discover information that they can share with each other and share with me. And in the process, we'll all be learning.
Okay, great. And do you plan to work with teachers and staff of КАСУ? And will there any workshops or open lectures?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we've already begun conversations about different ways that I can collaborate together with the faculty and staff here at КАСУ, and how we can work together to serve the broader community of East Kazakhstan. So yes, I'm definitely looking forward to how we can do that. We don't have any specific workshops on the calendar yet, but as we talk together, I'm sure we'll get some things scheduled. And yes, we've talked about how to invite others in from the community and from other universities around this oblast. So yes, I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, it would be a great experience for each of us, yeah. And you said that you have been working in Kazakhstan and Asia for a long time, yeah? So can you speak Kazakh and maybe you want to say something in Kazakh?
Well, yes. Janine and I first visited Kazakhstan in 1991 when it was still the Soviet Union. And then we moved here with our family in 1994. The first 3 Kazakh words that I learned were because of the wonderful Kazakh hospitality that we were experiencing. And so I learned to say, Boldum, Toydum, Rahmet. But yes, I can speak more than that.
Okay, yeah. And how do you think, why is it important to do research in modern education for young generation?
Well, it's critical because it's a modern world. We have many new technologies that are available to us, and only through doing research into education involving those technologies can we understand how to make best use of them in a positive way. Because it's also possible that technologies can have negative effects and negative consequences. If we don't research and understand these, we open ourselves up to those negative consequences. So no, we need to do research into modern education, but we need to do it in a way that recognizes the value of the ancient wisdom that our cultures already contain. And so that we're taking both the new and the old and integrating them together in positive ways so that we don't forget the wisdom of our forefathers.
Okay, would you tell us about your research work and what achievements in this sphere you were proud of the most?
Well, my dissertation research was an ethnographic case study into the indigenous restorative conflict resolution practices of the Kazakh people. And to conduct my research, I interviewed village elders, both men and women, who had lived or were still living in the Uyghur Autonomous Region of Xinjiang. And so most of the people I interviewed had immigrated into Kazakhstan, but some were still living in Xinjiang. And that was in 2016 that I was conducting my research. What I'm most proud of is that the stories that I collected from the people I interviewed can be preserved, especially in light of the current repression taking place in the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Republic. And the fact that there's so much pressure to cause the culture of those people to disappear. So if I've helped to preserve that culture, I'm proud of that. If I'm also helping to bring to light the truth of what's happening there so that somehow our world can join together to stop it, I'm also very proud to contribute to that effort.
I think that's very great. So many young researchers celebrate their doctorate degrees, and how did you defend it, and on what topic?
Yes, so as I mentioned, the topic was indigenous informal conflict resolution practices among Kazakhs. So these These were practices taking place in villages within families to solve conflicts that may have arisen within those communities, but they're informal processes. So it didn't include conflicts that would go to a court, or traditionally that would have gone to the judge in an area, but rather that the elders of the villages themselves would solve the conflicts. And so that was my topic. I defended it in October of 2018 at my university in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Nova Southeastern University. And I'm glad to say I was successful and I was given my degree. And so, yes, and my whole family celebrated with me.
Okay. Do you plan to develop scientific cooperation at our university, at CAFU?
Oh, of course, yes. And like I mentioned, I'm already in conversations with other faculty and administrators about how we can do that.
Okay. And what would you like to wish our students and teachers?
Well, of course, here at the beginning of 2021, I want to wish success and good health to everyone associated with CAFU and to everyone here in East Kazakhstan.
And I hope that all your dreams and aspirations at CAFU will come true. So thank you very much for our conversation. It was very interesting. So see you in class.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next guest is Janine. Janine is from Colorado. She plans to actively participate in the educational and social spheres of the university.
Hello, Janine. Welcome to our university. So, tell us about yourself and what do you do?
Thank you. Thank you for having me here today. So, a little bit about myself. I think Ron said that we've been married 42 years. So, we have lived, I grew up in Colorado in the U.S. So, my hometown is very similar to Uskamin. It's a beautiful place with mountains, forest, and lots of snow. So I'm happy here. I feel like I'm at home. So as to what I do, I think I'd like to preface that with, I have a heart to develop people, to come alongside and help someone who is struggling in something move on to the next step. Or I've been a life coach probably the last 10 years. And so I do that a lot with the people I coach. But yeah, I just get joy of helping people move on and become more to the person that they were designed to be or their potential. So that's my basic motivation for all that I do. The last 4 years, I've partnered with Ron. I like the word partner, and I have a really great partner. And so I've been partnering with him in his conflict resolution work. And where it led us to, in our hometown in Colorado, was working in the schools to prevent conflict and to help children and with inter conflicts with other students or with their teachers or the administration. What I really liked doing was the preventative work, which was circle work. And so that's a little bit.
So yeah, you tell about some resolving conflicts and how to prevent conflicts. Maybe some tips, 2 or 3.
Yeah, I think I'll give you 2 tips. I think communication prevents a lot of problems, and so even over communication is good, and not communicating directly with the person that can have a issue with not going by, oh, I heard, because if you just listen to what you've heard, someone else has heard, it could be 3 or 4 levels deep, and it's not the truth, or it's not what someone meant. And then the other thing that I think helps in conflict, if something that someone says bothers you, try to overlook it. And then if you're still overlooking it, like in 24 hours, you probably need to go and talk to that person. And it usually ends up being, oh, that's not at all what I meant. This is what I meant. But overlooking, what I mean by that is let it go. That if you're unable to, yeah, if you can't do that, go and talk.
Okay. Please, could you tell us about the spent time in Kazakhstan? What do you remember? What did you like?
Yes. I think I have become very fond of certain individuals in Kazakhstan. You know, they are my good friends, and they're like family to me. And then, as a whole, I have a heart for Kazakhstan. You know, I wish my friends well and a good life, and I wish that for all the people of Kazakhstan. And I think one thing I like about living in Kazakhstan when we did was Kazakhstan changed me, and I think I became a better person. And I think that better person is about how I am a friend or how I relate with other people. And in these last years in America, I've often said, well, the Kazakh part of me, is this. And it usually relates to relating with people. And one example would be in Kazakhstan, you can have a cup of tea, or how many cups of tea? Many cups of tea with one person over a whole afternoon and talk and visit. It's an unhurried time. And usually when I meet with my friends in America, I know that they've only got a certain bit of time and then have to move on because lives are busy. And lives are full here in Kazakhstan, but they take time for people in an unhurried way, and I want that to be a part of who I am. So, and can I talk about the food? Yeah, our family, we love bauersock, we love pilaf, Monty, of course we love fish parmak. And for special days, like when my son graduated from high school and university, he wanted me to make a large platter of pilaf, bauersock, and francuski salad. So, yeah, so we love lots of things about the food here too.
Okay, thank you. And what about your first impression in Kazakhstan, in Usk-Magnitogorsk, maybe?
Yeah, the kindness of people here.
Okay, and do you plan to teach our students, maybe online?
Yeah, I would say probably not as a teacher like Ron is going to teach, but you'll see me in the classrooms. You know, I want to be that person that comes alongside people, like maybe with English, who it's harder for them to speak, meet them with them one-on-one or in a small circle, or just come alongside the teachers. I know I've met some, and they're great English teachers here. So just come alongside and give them my part as a native speaker. We've talked a little bit about mentoring some, and I would like to do that. That kind of goes along with my life coaching. And you will see me helping Ron maybe with the conflict prevention circles that we talked about, or because I really want to partner with him.
Okay, and what it means to you to be a teacher? Just for example, maybe some.
Like how. Well, I think a teacher. See, I have a teacher's heart to help people grow and develop. So a lot of times for me that would be helping people figure out where they can get the information or the expertise that they're lacking. So it's not only coming out of my mouth, but helping people find the things they need to elsewhere.
Okay, thank you. And what would you wish to our students and our teachers in КАФУ?
Yeah. Well, in this COVID year, I wish you health and safety. I wish you joy, and I wish you success in all your studies and your work.
Thank you. Thank you for our conversation.